Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help ambitious private practitioners across the globe to brand themselves and grow their dream practices. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building ninja tips. Visit privatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our signature marketing e-course. Here are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hey, Startup Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Private Practice Startup Podcast. And this really is our COVID series. It's interesting because with podcasts, they are historical. So you might be listening to this in current time, or maybe it'll be a year from now. And I'm curious to see what the world will be like then. But what we're going to talk about today is self-care with Julia. Julia Ayraud is a coach and consultant. We're going to be talking about 3 types of creative ways to practice self-care during times of crisis, and particularly right now, COVID-19. But before we get started, if this is the first time you're listening to us, we wanted to say thank you so much for choosing this podcast, especially during this time, because Kate and I have been working overtime and really just trying to find ways and pump out valuable content and information to support you during this crisis time. And we're trying to craft these podcasts to serve you during this time, but also look at ways to serve you at other times as well. So we're really excited to have Julie here today. But before we introduce her, we hope that you guys joined us last week as we spoke to the very dynamic, fun, energetic Katie Reed. Even in a time of crisis, she's very energetic. And Katie has been a guest on our podcast before. And Katie talked to us about how to work from home with kids and keep your sanity. So you're going to want to make sure you check out that podcast as well. You know, during this time, and as practice builders and consultants, our desire and our passion is really helping therapists build and grow their dream practices. And, if you are listening to this during the time of the COVID crisis, you might be in a place where you're wanting and desiring to actually start to create your practice. And we have some awesome free resources for you. Our podcast, we almost have 200 episodes right now and many more in the future. So take advantage of those free resources, as well as our A to Z cheat sheet, the essentials for building and growing your dream practice, which is at privatepracticestartup.com under the resources tab. So go ahead and grab that. A little bit about Julia is a self-care coach, group practice owner in Houston, Texas. She told us just before we got started that they did get the shelter in place order. So they will be going on lockdown at midnight tonight. I have a very dear friend in the Houston area. Julia, as a coach, she helps people create quarterly retreats and self-care plans to prevent burnout in their lives and careers and navigate life transitions as we are in now. As a person who has been burned out several times before, she's an Enneagram Type 2, Wing 3, personality type, chocoholic, me too, diehard Jimmy Buffett and Parrot fan. Julia is currently creating a course to help others host personal quarterly retreats and focus on their self-care practices using the areas of the body, mind, spirit, and soul. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're excited to have you. And I know that this is a very interesting time because, although we might be experts in certain areas, is that we are practicing what we preach and, feeling the stress levels and burnout and things like that, and really having to slather on the self-care, like more so than ever. So I'm really excited about this topic. And I know that many folks at Startup Nation are too. So we're really excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what you share, because I know it's something that is going to benefit Startup Nation, and I know I need to hear it too. And I love to also hear that you're an Enneagram 2 with a 3 wing. That's what I am as well. Yay! That's pretty cool. Yeah, so many people are really learning about the Enneagram stuff, which is really neat. Katie, you're figuring it out too, right?
Yeah, I'm a little far behind. Kate lent me the book, so I got to catch up because it feels like a different language y'all are speaking, and I'm not in on it, so I got to figure it out. So for those who don't know, share what an Enneagram Type 2 with Wing 3 is.
So basically it's the helper, and then you have a flavor of the 3 wing, which is, it's kind of like you're called the nurturer.
So you're positioned perfectly for this topic. And I love that. So tell us, I don't know, just kind of give us, Julie, a temperature reading of where you are now with everything going on and talking about self-care. I know before we hit record, I was asking you, your population that you serve, and you serve clients dealing with grief and loss. That's super heavy right now.
Yeah, it is. I'm just trying to tell everybody, take each day as it comes right now. Everything is so uncertain, and it's hard to really plan out what's going on in the world right now. So just really taking care of ourselves right now, and just focusing on that one day. Sometimes it's 1 hour at a time right now, or in our cases, one client at a time, getting through that and then focusing on the next client.
Yeah. So share with us some of your
I was just curious before we dive into the topic, just a little bit about your context personally, because this is a unique time for all of us. And so much of before it was easier to keep the professional and personal kind of separate, but now we're all staying at home. We're all either on the stay-at-home order, or we're choosing to do the social distancing. And so we're just kind of in our houses with our family. So I wanted to hear a little bit about who's in your house with you and how that's going and how your own self-care is going as we dive into the topic.
Sure. So right now it's just my husband and I. We don't have any kids. We have fur babies. So we have 2 dogs and a cat, and they're ruling the roost right now. They're enjoying our company. Looking for squirrels. I had to move my office upstairs in my house. So I was on the screen-in porch for a little bit. But you just kind of have to go with the flow of things right now. I can't imagine right now if I had kids, trying to be able to do the homework and everything else that a lot of people are going through right now besides working.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a lot. And as far as like the self-care thing, I think one thing that's been big for me is to prioritize my day and just do a to-do list for today and just map out what are the 3 most important things I need to do. And then also carve out that self-care time, whether it's, it's unique and different for every person. So for me, I love to cook, and that's part of my self-care. I love to just relax with my fur babies, my dogs and my cat, take walks, things like that. So it's important to carve out that time right now, especially.
And what are your fur babies' names?
Hank is a dachshund, and Molly is a Chiweenie, and then I have a cat named Gracie Kelly.
So what is a Chiweenie, Chihuahua, and hot dog?
Yep.
A Chiweenie. That's interesting. I'll have the Chiweenie, please, with cheese. And that just sounds
It looks
funny.
similar to a dachshund, but she's kind of Chihuahua-like, so it's kind of
Very
funny.
Cool. So I'm curious also too, Julie, about your own story. I know that you said you've suffered your own burnout several times, which obviously probably led you into coaching others. So if you would, I would love to hear about that.
Sure. So I have a couple of burnout stories that really stick out. My first experience with burnout was when I was a school teacher. I started off in teaching as my first career, and I got severely burned out. I mean, as burned out as you could get, hardly being able to manage my job as a teacher, even having my mom come in and help me because she used to be a school teacher as well. And severe anxiety, depression, just unhealthy coping habits, things like that, that were in the way, and just that dread of going to work and feeling heavy every day. I worked with a tough population. It was a Title I school. And so a lot of the parents, it was hard to get that support from them. So I got severely burned out with that. And then I went into another career, actually selling homes and marketing and new home sales. And so I did that for a little while. And then I went into becoming a counselor. The most recent time that I've been burned out was when I went to Ernesto's training, his conference in Kauai. And trainings normally rejuvenate me and give me a lot of ideas. And I just love being around people. And I tell you this, I could only last through one training out of the whole 1 3-hour training. I was just could not focus. I could not think about another counseling related topic. And I was growing a group practice at the time. And I think I just put in a lot of work and effort into that and wasn't taking time for myself. And so I realized the importance of self-care in Kauai, and thus the coaching business, Self-Care with Julia, was formed shortly after. So
I love that you say that because, many times in my career, like, I'll feel like sometimes I don't want to be a therapist anymore, right? Like I just kind of want to pull away. And it was interesting because coming into 2020, so once a quarter, my business coach, we do something called Growth Club, and Growth Club is planning for the next quarter, so the next 90 days. And so I made a declaration to the group of probably 70 people. I'm like, I am going on a vacation the first quarter of this year because usually I come out the gate in any year and hit the ground running and exhaust myself, and I go to all of the trainings. And so I just really appreciate you sharing that because there are some times where it's just I need to tap out, right? And, really honoring that for ourselves is that, as helpers, I think that we are, even more prone, definitely to burnout for sure. Kate, I know that your dissertation was all about that. So I just appreciate you sharing that. So thank you for that. And I'll have to say, I'm really upset because I was supposed to be going on a cruise April 4th, even though it wasn't in the first quarter. Of course, it got canceled. Yeah, but that's okay. So last night I watched, I found something on YouTube where you can do this meditation travel. So I traveled Norway last night as I fell asleep.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you're definitely going to go on a vacation as soon as you're able to travel again. So you have to make that top priority, maybe for quarter 2 or quarter 3. Who knows when that will be, but it will be sometime in the future. And Julia, just to acknowledge, I can definitely relate to what you're talking about struggling with burnout. And Katie just mentioned that I wrote my dissertation on what is it that works for passionately committed therapists, basically the opposite side of burnout. Because I also went through really bad compassion fatigue, vicarious traumatization, and burnout experience working with a really high risk, very intensive outpatient program clientele, and it was so hard to get up and go to work, and it was very draining. I'm very much a highly sensitive person, so I absorbed all of that energy, and I can remember having nightmares, constantly thinking about what was going on with my clients and dreading that going to work, but still wanting to help and wanting to make a difference. And it was a exhausting, really difficult place to be in. And when you're in that place, you just kind of want to retreat, right? And not continue to have to show up and to be on and to be there for people. So I get what you're talking about when you're talking about being at Ernesto's conference and just being okay, that's it. I gotta step back. Time to retreat.
Right.
Yeah.
I like how you said about the highly, being more sensitive, because that's especially who I am. And especially right now when you're hearing all these stories with your clients and what everybody's going through, or the news or the media, it's hard to not soak that all in right now. And it's
a lot.
Times right now, we really got to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also I'm noticing too, just the helplessness that you feel and how, I just feel as we talk about it, how devastating that is. Just knowing child abuse is on the rise because kids are at home and it's you feel helpless. I think about all of the, animals in the shelters and the donations that aren't coming in. And it's just, sometimes we have to kind of just close off. And I know I have to go in my own world or get grounded in nature or do whatever I need to do to get grounded to be able to show up. You know what I mean? So share with us how you coach people through self-care.
So I try to take a creative approach and try to help people with create a self-care plan, and everybody's plan is unique and tailored to them. So I like to use things like the Enneagram, like the wellness wheel, personality kind of inventory and characteristics to kind of see how that fits into their lives. And so I use that to create a self-care plan for them. And we just kind of go based on where they're at, what's going on in their life. For instance, right now, taking time for themselves and breaking it down further into smaller, measurable steps. So,
talk a little bit more about that when you talk about measurable steps.
So things instead of looking at the whole big picture right now and the unknown, it can be very scary right now and anxiety provoking. But if we focus on maybe just the day and we focus on maybe the 3 things that we need to accomplish in the day and just maybe pick or prioritize 3 things that we need to do for the day, that can be helpful and really break down some of that anxiety, and we cross it off as we go, and we feel more accomplished and we feel more in control of our day versus looking at everything else right now when there's so much unknown and we can't even control anything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what's interesting is, you know, I guess I always look at things with a business mindset, right? And so when we look at like self-care, you know, I have this rule called me first, and me first is the beginning of the day, right? And if I don't get those essentials done, you know, I'm not always as grounded and as clear. And as you're talking, like one of the things that I think about is really grounding yourself, number one, but really taking those moments in the morning, or maybe getting up early or whenever you can that works for you to do those self-care practices. And also, you know, as you talk about like the three most important things, I think of the book, Eat That Frog I think it's by Brian Tracy, right? Or The One Thing, right? Like focusing on the one thing and really leaving the rest. I know for me, a lot of times people think like, oh, Katie, you're very structured and you're a planner and you get a lot done. And that's true, but it is a conscious decision constantly, and like constantly tweaking and evolving my day and my schedule to make it work for me. And I think a lot of that is planning and commitment, and sometimes accountability, right? Like I was thinking this morning, like I wish there was this thing that like we could like lock our computers and set it for a time that I couldn't get in, you know, because I'll have like these flight of ideas in the morning and I'll run to the computer and I'm on it and I'm like, crap, I'm on it for 15 minutes. I need to go do my other stuff. You know what I mean? So even though I shut my like emails down and things like that, it's hard not to, you know, run on over to the computer and do those things.
It is hard, especially when, you know, we're not going into an office, we're not leaving the house, we're all working from home, and it's easy to just get sucked into that. I know for me in the morning, it's especially with having a baby and now having my son home from school. And it's like, I learned very quickly, if I don't get that walk in and get us out and do some sort of exercise, it's so hard to focus on the rest of the day. So as much as I want to jump on the computer and tackle a few things that I know I want to get out of the way, like the Eat That Frog, I know that if I don't get the exercise in or don't have that time for us to be out in nature, getting our rammies out and that sort of a thing, the other stuff isn't going to get done. So we all have to be so intentional at this time to really be protective of that self-care and of the top priorities, because if not, they're just going to get overrun and taken over by so many other things. Everything's just kind of bleeding into all these different areas, and it makes it really hard to separate and prioritize sometimes.
Yeah. And I want to dive into like the mind, the body, the soul aspect. But before we do that, let's just take a quick break for our sponsor.
If you're in private practice, you wear a lot of hats, and some of those hats are totally great, but some, like filing taxes and running payroll, for example, not so great. That's where Gusto comes in. They make payroll, taxes, and HR actually easy for small businesses like your private practice. Fast, simple payroll processing and benefits and expert HR support all in one place. Gusto automatically pays and files your federal, state, and local taxes so you don't have to worry about it. Plus, they make it easy for you to add on health benefits and even 401ks for you and your team. Let them wear one of your many hats. You have so many better things to do with your time. Listeners get 3 months free when they run their first payroll. Try a demo and see for yourself at gusto.com/PPS. That's gusto.com/PPS. There are so many ways to keep your practice organized, but Therapy Notes is by far the best. Their easy-to-use, secure platform lets you not only do billing, scheduling, and progress notes, but also create a client portal to share documents and request signatures. Plus, they offer amazing unlimited phone support. So when you have a question, they're there so you can get help fast. Get started with Therapy Notes today, trusted by over 60,000 professionals. Go to therapynotes.com and enter promo code PPS, as in Private Practice Startup, and you'll get 2 months for free. Also, you can listen to episode 54, where we interviewed Brad Pliner and took an in-depth view into their EHR.
So Julie, I know that you really tailor make everything to each person. So share with us how you like incorporate the three.
So you really want to, all of these different three things, they feed into one another. Okay. And so what your mind is activated by your body and vice versa. So I think it's important that we kind of touch upon some of the different areas like the body, the mind, and the soul or the spirit, and get, like you guys were saying earlier, the routine and the structure is really important right now. especially when you're going through a crisis, okay? To make sure that you are continuing to do some of those things first thing in the morning, and then you also unwind at night and have that routine. So things like with the body, like restorative yoga right now, with the props, the towels, all those different things that you combine right now. That's really a good thing to de-stress right now. Just walking and grounding outside, and feeling, the earth with your feet, and getting your senses and dive into all the what you're smelling, what you're seeing around you, what you're hearing. Some other things like meditation right now with your, that's really huge for your soul or your spirit, connecting, rewiring that brain right now of those thoughts that may be negative or anxious that are spiraling right now. Even thinking about gratitude and, being thankful and about the things, even if it's the littlest things in your life right now, those types of things. And I think one thing that you brought up earlier is kind of like a digital detox, if you will. Having some breaks right now away from media or even social media, maybe setting a timer for spending maybe 30 minutes watching the news at the most during the day or something like that. If you know that you are someone that soaks things up like a sponge, it's important to take care of yourself right now.
I had to do that for myself.
I love all the things that you shared, and being someone who's worked from home with this business for a while, I've used YouTube a lot for my fitness stuff and my meditations, and there's so many great things on there. And don't forget, guys, you can make a playlist, so you can meditation stuff that you like, you can throw that in there. And one of the beautiful things that I've enjoyed, and I shared with Kate and Allison and Laura Long this morning, is on my walk is trying to find things that you're discovering anew, right? Like sometimes we just walk because, okay, we're just trying to get the walk in. It's part of our exercise, but take time, really engage your five senses. And I walked by this fence this morning, and it was kind of early morning, and the sun was risen already, but on the fence, it said, man's art is nature and God's nature is art. And it was just beautiful. I didn't see that before. I walked down this road or rode the bike, and I actually created a post on Facebook to say, what are you discovering in nature right now? Just to really be mindful that, we're experiencing that, or just creating a grounding or a community around that. Because there's some beautiful moments. I also, walking the dogs this morning, I saw, there's a kid, there's lots of kids in the neighborhood, but they must have done chalk drawing. And he created this cute little thing. It says, "We love the earth." And they drew a picture of the earth. And, amidst this really difficult time, those just are really special, heartfelt things that we're not seeing as much in our really hustle and bustle world. So, taking the extra time to really be mindful of just embracing and feeling and experiencing that, because to me, that's the soul stuff right there, right? It's when people are doing goodnesses or kindnesses in the world, or we're participating that, or we're seeing that, that to me is really fulfilling.
You and I jumped in to talk at the same time, and I was going to share kind of a similar story. One of the things that I've been enjoying about this time that's unique, because normally my older son is in school. Now he's home with us. So when I'm taking the walk with the baby, like I normally do, I'm able to have my son there with me. And instead of, scrolling on the phone or listening to podcasts or whatever I'd be doing on my walk, I might be responding to a few emails or multitasking as usual. But with my son, Landon, there, I'm fully present. We're looking all around. We're finding caterpillars and butterflies and cardinals. And this morning we found a 4-leaf clover. And so it's I see the world through his eyes, this childlike curiosity, and it's forced me to be so present in the moment. And all of the anxiety of all the big problems and the stress and the unknowns and everything just kind of melts away, and I can be fully present with him there. And that's something that's been so helpful in helping just ground me and get me through some of these difficult times. So I definitely encourage you guys to look for those moments, create those moments, because they really do make a huge difference.
Yeah, and mindfulness, I think if you take away anything is from this whole situation, is that it's teaching us to be mindful and to be present in everyone's lives right now. It's huge.
Yeah. And really just the authenticity of the connection of being human, I think is, also very present. So, and I love that you suggest restorative yoga. I love restorative yoga. That is so great. And, if you don't have blocks and stuff like that, you can use other things, towels, blankets, and stuff like that. But it is, if you haven't tried it, it's definitely very nice. It's also called yin yoga, for restorative yoga, but very peaceful, and it's often deep.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Awesome. Julie, I know that you have a freebie for our audience. What is that?
Yeah, so it's 21 free tools to prevent burnout in your work and your personal life. And you can get that on my website at juliaayraud.com/prevent-burnout. So that's JuliaAyraud.com.
And we'll put that on the show notes too, so you guys can always check that out at theprivatepracticestartup.com underneath the podcast tab. Julie, we thank you for being with us during this very crucial time. And also, I just want to remind folks that, the things that we've talked about today, wouldn't it be beautiful and great as a human race if we can continue this, right? And not go back to the craziness of life as we've always done, and take time to do these things to really care for ourselves and care for each other. So Startup Nation, as you know, we are bobbing and weaving with the times and being flexible. And so we're really providing specific topics for this time. I know we have a few ideas coming out. We haven't solidified our next podcast, but it will definitely be around a COVID topic for you guys that you guys are needing for sure.
And if you guys are enjoying these podcasts, definitely share with your colleagues, with your friends. We really appreciate helping get the word out, because that allows us to be able to help as many therapists as we can across the globe. And we always encourage you guys to subscribe, rate, and review our show. We always love when we get little emails or feedback from you letting us know that the topics that we're creating are really on point and that they're what you're needing most. So if there's a specific topic that you want to hear, COVID related or not, definitely shoot us an email, post in the Facebook group. We would love to be able to create that for you.
Thank you, Startup Nation. And as we always say, thanks for allowing for us to inspire you guys from startup to mastery. Take care, be well, stay healthy.
Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.